So we have part one, which is county attorney, PVA, and sheriff. And once we're finished with questions for them, they will come down and the state representatives will come up. So that's how the evening will go. They get a minute to open, and then they get a minute to close. So we will move forward with this as soon as I introduce two very important people. So we have Cecile Schubert, League of Women Voters, who is our timer for the evening. And we have Christy Runyon Middleton, who is our moderator for the evening. And thank you to both of you for all the hard work that you've put into this. If you have questions, you can take them. There's cards and pens at the front table. You write them down and put them in the box, and we have someone looking over those that will get them to the front table. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and we look forward to the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy, and thank you to all of our candidates who are here tonight. I know that we've given you a brief orientation, but just so everyone in the audience knows how it's going to work. Again, we're going to start with this panel, and we'll take a little bit of a break and bring some more candidates up after that. But we will start in groups with the race that you are each representing. And we will ask individual questions. These are questions that will be chosen at random. They are not directed to any specific candidate, but they are individual questions that we will give each of you in the first round after you all have a 1-minute opportunity to give your own introduction of who you are, why you are running, and anything else you would like to share with the audience. Then when we go through the individual questions, if there is a particular topic that you would like to comment on and share your thoughts with the audience, please jot that down, and we will have an opportunity at the end of the individual questions for you to provide any additional comment on maybe an issue that you were not specifically asked about. At the end of each panel, we will also have an opportunity for 1-minute closing remarks. We remind you, my wonderful timekeeper here to my left, Cecile, who does a great job of keeping everyone on time, will give you a 30-second warning, a 15-second warning, and then the time's up sign.
Good luck.
And you can finish your thought if you get the dreaded stop sign, so you don't have to stop right mid-sentence, but please finish that sentence and that thought and let us move on, because we do have two groups to get through tonight. We're going to try to get everyone through here as quickly as possible. And thank you to our audience and anyone who may have submitted questions online through the survey. We will try to get to as many of your questions as we can. You may notice me shuffling cards. I'm not picking favorites, and I'm not hand selecting questions for each candidate, but some of them are very similar, so we'll try to combine and make sure that they're addressed adequately in a few questions, because we won't be able to get to all of them. Or if one candidate has already spoke to a particular topic, I may move a question on to the next candidate, so we don't have to ask you the same thing more than once. Well, if we are all ready, I think we are set to begin. Thank you again for all being here. And we will start with our candidates for Madison County Attorney, and they are in alphabetical order down the line. And so we will begin with you, Mr. Frazier.
I feel like I'm at a jury trial right now. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tyler Frazier. I was born and raised here in Madison County, and I have deep roots here. And I'm running for Madison County Attorney for very simple reasons. I love public service, and I love the law. For the past 3 years, I've served as an assistant Commonwealth attorney here in town, prosecuting hundreds of felony cases. And this job, it's a relentless effort to serve and to do good and make right. And it's a job where you can lift people up and really make a difference in people's lives. And a lot of this difference, the impact isn't seen by the public. Restitution orders, so victims can put food on the table, have money for heating. Thank yous from mothers after you've sent an addicted child to rehab, giving them a chance to clear their name. And I enjoy going in every day and facing the county's toughest problems. And just as an experiment, anybody who has an addicted loved one, neighbor, co-worker, you could just please raise your hand. I think looking around, you can see the gravity of the problem we face. Thank you.
Thank you. We will begin with our next candidate. 1 minute for Ms. Heyman.
Thank you. My name is Jenny Heyman. I'm candidate for Madison County Attorney. To start off with, I'd like to thank the Chamber and EKU for hosting us here, but also for the audience to come out and really just be able to see kind of what we do. A lot of people actually don't know what the County Attorney's Office does. A little bit about myself. I was born in Fort Polk, Louisiana. For those that have any military service in their background, they'll know that means I was born on a military base. My father was in the Army. I have a younger sister and younger brother who like to show me up. They're both majors in the Air Force. So public service runs deep in my family. And that's what this is. I tell everyone I'm not a politician, that I'm a public servant. I've been prosecuting for over 10 years. And that was a decision I made in the 6th grade, that that's what I wanted to do. Madison County has been my home since I came to Eastern in 1999. I was a criminal justice major, so it's been consistent throughout. And it's important to me to give back to this community that's taking care of me. And in doing so, provide some guidance and support for our law enforcement to address this drug epidemic that we are facing, and also to help with our children. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Mr. Jennings.
Hello, it's on. It's great to see so many people out here today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Robert Jennings. I'm running for Madison County Attorney. Simply, I'm running for County Attorney because Madison County is my home. It's a place I love. It's a place that I care about. It's hard not to feel that way. I was born here, raised here. My family's been here for over 200 years, and that's not by any accident. Madison County is a great place to live, but it's growing, and with it, so are its problems. We've got a serious drug problem that is not a secret whatsoever. I'm committed to making sure that everyone in this county continues to feel the way I do about Madison County, and that it's a great place to live. I want to make sure that this county remains a safe place for you to work, a safe place for you to raise your family, and a safe place for you to go around without any kind of fear. So on May 22nd, I'd ask for your support.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you. I began as your county attorney on October 1st, taking over for Mark Robbins. I had been an assistant for 5 years, from 2009 to 2015, and I believed at the time I took over that experience would prepare me for the job. And I was wrong. What prepared me for the job was my 20 years of law practice. What you don't understand is that as county attorney, you are effectively general counsel for a $50 million organization. And so from day one, since I took the office, complicated issues have come across the desk. Complicated human resource issues, complicated zoning issues, complicated ordinance issues, difficult issues that require tough decisions. And 10 years ago, I couldn't have done that job. It has tested every bit of skill and experience that I've built over my practice of law. Prosecuting is vitally important, but it's just one piece of the county attorney's office. And it's important that we all remember that as we determine who's going to be our general counsel for the county. I can tell you, from my perspective, for me, it's the right job at the right time, and I love it.
Thank you to all of our candidates for Madison County Attorney. We'll hear again from them here in just a moment. We would like to give an opportunity to let our candidates for Madison County PVA introduce themselves. 1 minute, gentlemen. We'll begin with Mr. Ackerman.
My name is Billy Ackerman, and I have had the privilege to serve as your Madison County PVA for the last 9 years. I am a product of Madison County Schools. I have a bachelor's degree in finance and received my MBA both from EKU. Before I became PVA in 2009, I worked as a realtor and since have been awarded the Certified Kentucky and Senior Kentucky Assessor designations. I'm blessed to work with an amazing staff that recognizes the importance of customer service. We have made great progress over the last 9 years, but there's still more to do. We now offer online property data for transparency, and we've updated the assessment records to give a more equitable tax base. As PVA, it is my responsibility to work directly with you to resolve any issues. It has been my experience that when we listen to each other and we work together, we can find fair and equitable solutions. Thank you.
Mr. West.
Yeah. My name is Chris West. I'm a candidate for Property Valuation Administrator. It's better known as the PVA. I grew up in Richmond. I wasn't born here, but I was planted in Madison County and Richmond at a young age, and my roots grew deep. I consider this my home. I'm proud to call Madison County Richmond my home, and little background about myself. I graduated from Model High School in 1979 and obtained my Bachelor of Business Administration degree from EKU. And in 1983, and for the next 20 years, I was a real estate appraiser. And during this time, I owned and operated West Appraisal Company and completed thousands of appraisals. For the next 10 years, I worked at the PVA office as a senior assessor. And then for the last 3 years, I worked for the Department of Revenue as a property assessment coordinator and covered 7 counties. Thank you.
And thank you to our candidates for PVA. And finally, we have a candidate here for sheriff, and we begin with 1 minute for you, Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Rick Johnson. Most people know me by Rick. I was born and raised here in Madison County, grew up here. I'm running for sheriff of Madison County, and the reason I'm running for sheriff is I've had several people contact me, as most candidates have spoke about. We have a serious drug epidemic here, and a little bit about my background. I specialized in drug enforcement. I've got a 32-year career in public service. I started at the Madison County Ambulance Service in 1992. I went to work for Richmond Police Department. In 94, I was assigned as a narcotics detective there until 2006. I was assigned at the DEA Drug Task Force in Lexington, Kentucky, and went on to become the director of a task force here in 2006 to 2010. And I work for Paris Police Department, also work in narcotics, so my specialty is narcotics investigations.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our candidates. We will now begin with the individual questions. Same rules apply. You will have 1 minute for a response, and you will be getting warnings from our timekeeper to limit your comments to just 1 minute. And again, all these questions have been submitted and will be selected at random. We will begin with our candidates for county attorney. Our first question will go to Mr. Frazier. What skills do you have to represent the Madison Fiscal Court with their legal needs?
Well, the legal needs of representing the fiscal court, I believe my skill set is with criminal law. So I have a lot of help I think I can bring to the healing center and to the addressing the issues with the jail, funding for the jail. And I believe this has been a big issue. And I believe we've kind of come to a compromise in talking to the magistrates and the judge executive on the healing center and expanding the jail both, which I think are vitally important to the community and I think is right in my skill set.
Our next question for Ms. Heyman. What is the role of the county attorney and what would be your goals in the first 90 days in office?
Well, that's a very broad question because the role of the county attorney actually includes a lot that everybody doesn't necessarily see on a regular basis. Everyone knows about the prosecution of the criminal cases. In addition, as Mr. Patterson pointed out, there is the fiscal court representation. There's everything ranging from collection of delinquent ad valorem property taxes. So that would be a lot to take in the first 90 days. My goal would be to come in and evaluate where the change needs to be. You know, our predecessor served for 20 years, and although he did a great job, there's always room for improvement. And I've been taught from a very young age that it takes a lot of hard work and you just have to put that into it. So I'd like to make that assessment so that we see what needs to be changed because changes are needed to stay on top of the drug epidemic, to provide the guidance needed in court and for law enforcement. But also, and a big issue for me is, unfortunately, to get to our children at a younger age. They are exposed these days to things that we were not exposed to at their age, and we need to be able to get in front of that to protect for their future as well.
Mr. Jennings, what qualities or experience make you a strong candidate for the job?
Well, first, I'm a practicing attorney here in Richmond. As part of my practice, I am weekly in the courts that are serviced by the Madison County Attorney's Office. I'm on those dockets every single week. I practice on all of them. And like Ms. Heyman spoke to, that doesn't just include prosecution. That includes child support. That includes neglect and abuse for children. That includes mental health trials. I've done all of those. That's been my exclusive practice I've been successful at that practice, and at this point in time, I'd like to have the opportunity to benefit the community through my practice as Madison County Attorney. As far as quality goes, it's a unique position when you're representing the entire community, but I believe that the thing you have to do first and foremost is just be fair with everyone, be honest with them, and be accountable to them. And that's a promise that I'll make to everybody in this room, is that that's what I'll do.
Mr. Patterson, what motivates you to hold this office?
The people that I'm staring at right now, the people in this community. It's where I raised my family. It's where I built my business. And in a service business like the practice of law, you're very intimately involved in the people that you represent. And so every time I look at anything that I have in my life, my house, my farm, where my children go to school, it's because of the people in this community that I have those things. And so I feel a very deep connection to those people. Additionally, it's as I said in my opening, it's the right job at the right time for me. I'm not sure that this was always a job that I could have done in my career. But at this point, I've learned really valuable and expensive lessons on my own dime that I think that the county can benefit from. And that's what I think I bring to the table is an idea of how to manage the office, how to handle the difficult issues that come with an office of our size in a county of this size. We're a big county with big issues, and I'm excited about the opportunity to be involved.
Okay, we're going to stick with the county attorney candidates for our next round of questions. So you all on this side of the table can take a breath here for a second, and we'll visit you in a moment. Continuing with our question, this one for Mr. Frazier. Do you believe your office should improve child support collections? If so, how?
I think the county attorney's office is actually very effective in collecting child support at the moment. I think the improvements come in the customer service, because I've had a lot of people, as I've gone door to door, take issue with sometimes the way they've been treated. I think they've been treated fair as far as the outcomes, but as far as the customer service side and the child support, that would be my only issue with the current state of affairs.
Ms. Heyman, your question also deals with collections, but specifically delinquent taxes. How do you plan to pursue delinquent tax collections?
So, it's a rough job when you're the person who puts people in jail and collect property taxes. I generally say most of the days I'm the least favorable person in the office. Luckily for me, I have had that experience. I've been collecting property taxes as long as I've been prosecuting. And I've had the benefit in my current position to be able to say that I've actually collected over $1 million worth of delinquent property taxes that benefit the county directly. That money goes to the school boards, that money goes to your different services that provide for the services to the community. And so although it's never ideal, and everybody hates getting their property tax bill, sorry, PVA candidates, it's something that has to be done. And I pay my taxes, and unfortunately that means other people have to pay theirs, but we try to do it in a manner that's fair. Those that don't know, Chapter 134 of the KRS regulates all the delinquent property taxes, so you can provide a payment plan and help the citizens of the community reach to get that paid off and without having to lose their homes. So thank you.
Mr. Jennings, your question. In terms of criminal prosecution, would you support a docket to help expedite drug-related offenses and help lower jail costs?
I would support that if that docket had alternatives to jailing. As far as an addict goes, the district courts right now, if you go on any given Monday or Tuesday, you will see hundreds of people going through there. And a lot of that is related to drug crimes. So with that, if you have an addict that comes in and you don't treat the problem with the addict, they're going to come back. And you've got 8 out of 10 people coming back to that jail. So I would have an expedited docket if that part of that docket included having opportunities for these folks that want to have treatment to seek that treatment. At that point, you're actually curing a problem with them, you're getting them out of your jails, you're freeing up resources for the rest of the county, and you'll be able to effectively manage cases that maybe need a little bit more attention than your possession case.
Mr. Patterson, your question. What plans or programs would you support to aid victims or advocate on their behalf?
Yeah, so my opinion is every victim is where we start every discussion in our office. Sometimes we feel like the lone voice in the wilderness because we hear so much about the addict. And so our position as prosecutors is to begin with the victim of a crime. Somebody's had something taken from them or someone's been hurt as a result of some crime. So the mindset is the most important place to start. We start with the victim's rights in mind. We have an excellent victims advocate in our office. We've got excellent communication processes in place to make sure that victims are aware of what's going on. You'll hear a lot about a new law called Marcy's Law, which is being proposed, which is a whole constitutional amendment that will increase victims' rights. I like to think that we do that anyway. It's vitally important to everything we do that victims are aware, involved, and their voices is heard.
I remind you to all of our candidates for county attorney, if there's something that another candidate spoke to, we'll revisit that here when we get through with this next round of questions for the remaining candidates. Moving on to our candidates for Madison County PVA, we'll start with you, Mr. Ackerman. How do you feel that you can improve this county office?
You know, we've made a lot of progress in the last 9 years, but there's always room for improvement and there's always new challenges. We continue to look for new ways to use technology to be able to assess more accurately, more efficiently. As a state office, we are part of the budget crisis. And so we are constantly looking at a moving target. So we have to be able to navigate the different options available to us. It used to be that you could throw people at a problem, and that's no longer the case. We do use pictometry, which allows us to get closer into a property's view to be able to measure, to get a little bit better idea of characteristics. But ultimately, it's going to be the personal touch, improved customer service through technology that will help us improve even further.
Mr. West, what qualities do you feel separate you from the other candidates in your desire to be PVA?
I think that would be my experience. I was a real estate appraiser for 20 years and completed thousands of appraisals in Madison County for mortgages, banks, insurance companies, attorneys. My 10 years working at the PVA office gives me about 30 years experience. And I know all the areas of the county. There's all the little back roads I've been on, so just my experience, that would be the one factor that I would say that I would allow me to better that office.
We're going to stick with our candidates for PVA with a couple more questions. Back to you, Mr. Ackerman. Do you feel that Madison County properties are properly assessed, meaning that households pay taxes on their true value? Why or why not?
I do, and it's always a moving target. For example, this year the market has gone up tremendously, so we're having to take on a little bit heavier workload to get some of those property values up to where they should be. But overall, yes, I do believe so. We've taken a lot of time to gather characteristics that will allow us to reassess more quickly, and that's been part of the problem in the past, is that you have to have good data to be able to put those assessments on there. So overall, yes. Again, we're continuing to look at different options and new ways to reassess, whether it's technology, hopefully more manpower if the state budget ever lets up. But I do overall feel like that we're at a fair market value.
Mr. West, what ideas do you have on streamlining the process of assessing properties using various forms of technology?
Okay, the technology is great. I mean, the pictometry and the computers allow you to, anything's at the touch of a mouse, pretty much. But for reassessing purposes, and I've thought about this, and one of the differences that how I would assess property is the field crew that goes out into the county and looks at the property and takes pictures and gathers characteristics about the property. They bring them back to the office, and then those properties are assessed. What I would like to do is train those field people to go out and look at the sales in the area, and while they're out there on the site, they would actually look at any changes that have been made and complete the assessments on the property while they're there. I just feel if you're there in person, you can get a better feel of what the property's like than if you're looking at it through a pictometry or a picture. Sometimes a picture paints a pretty picture, and sometimes the picture doesn't.
Thank you to both of our candidates for PVA. We will begin now with our candidate for sheriff. Your first question, Mr. Johnson. What do you see as potential changes to the office of sheriff if you were elected?
If I were elected sheriff of Madison County, I would look at increasing the addressing the drug problem that we have, and increasing maybe through moving jobs around from like road deputies or something, that once I looked at the budget I could look and ascertain where I needed to move to and try to put more people in place targeting the opiate or heroin epidemic that we're facing.
We'll ask a second question for you. What is your position on arming teachers or staff in schools?
If properly trained and the psychological evaluation the same as a police officer takes, the legal training, carrying concealed weapons training, I would be for it under the proper training and supervision.
Thank you. We'll move down to the rest of our panel, but I know you don't have another candidate to respond to, but if there is any topic that other candidates, you can feel free to have the same opportunity to address those as well. So at this point, we've gone through a few of the individual questions. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to anything that you've heard earlier this evening. Mr. Frazier, is there anything you would like to follow up on? 1 minute.
Yes, the question about the first 90 days. I want to implement case management software. I believe our prosecutors are a little behind the times in not having the digital platform to deliver discovery, to manage the docket, to streamline things. The question about streamlining a docket, we're just now implementing a rocket docket to move cases along for low-level offenders, really to get them into treatment quicker. And that's really the aim, what we need to do with district court all the way to circuit court. We need to expedite and get people into treatment because it's really the only way we can deal with this crisis that we have right now.
Ms. Heyman, you have 1 minute to respond to anything that you've heard earlier.
Thank you. First, I'd like to address the uniquely qualified question I think Mr. Jennings had received. You know, I've been practicing law for 13 years. going on 11 of them I've been prosecuting. The benefit of my position as Assistant County Attorney in Kentucky is it's a part-time position. I've been lucky enough to also have a civil practice in addition to the prosecution. And the prosecution side, I've had the benefit of representing in fiscal court and kind of getting the training needed in that sense. On the private side, I've been very lucky with my current employer who's provided me the guidance in learning how to run a business, in managing our human resource side, personnel, payroll. I process our taxes and pay our quarterly taxes. So I think it provides a lot for me to bring to this. I do this because this is what I love. It's what I want to do and give back to the community, like I said, that has taken care of me for so long, because I think that's the most important part, is that we do what's best for where we live, because Madison County is a great community, and I really would like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Mr. Jennings, you have 1 minute to respond to any comments.
Yes. What I'd like to do, we have a drug court and district court that is working. It's very effective. What we don't have a mental health court to treat individuals who may not have a substance abuse problem, but have a mental illness that hasn't been diagnosed, or maybe they're not taking the prescription that they need. I've advocated for that. I've spoken with our district judges. They're proponents of it. That's something that I certainly want to implement to ensure that these folks, again, have an opportunity to cure the problem that's got them in front of me to begin with. The same thing goes for a veterans court. That's a recently new proposition that it's been developed over the last 5 or 6 years, but it's pretty much the same components that you have folks that have served this country may come back with a post-traumatic stress, or they may have some kind of substance abuse issue, and they need help being connected to resources to treat those issues. I think that's something simple that we can do, and that's what I'm going to implement.
Mr. Patterson, 1 minute for any additional comments you'd like to share.
Thank you. I guess to answer the question about what I would do in the first 90 days, I'll tell you what I did. So one of the first things we did was we upgraded our technology, co-opted with the county's technology. They've got one of the best IT departments in the state, maybe the country. So we co-opted with them and have improved our technology tremendously, upgraded our phone system, some other things, and that's going to open some doors to do some of the things that Mr. Frazier spoke about. Additionally, we instituted an insurance diversion program that's new to our county, and that allows us to make sure that the people that are on the roads are insured. That's vitally important, especially when if you've ever been hit by somebody who was uninsured, you know just how important that is. It's been a tremendous success. Proud of that. Began a lot of communication with the local police departments, EKU, Berea PD, RPD, Sheriff's Office. I called a listening tour. We went out and met with them and exchanged ideas and have seen great improvement. And I'm really pleased to announce that we'll be launching a home incarceration program that'll be run by the County Attorney's Office, and that'll start soon. And to Robert's point, I just haven't got to the mental health court yet, but that's coming as well.
Thank you very much to our candidates for county attorney. As we move to our candidates for Madison County PVA, Mr. Ackerman, 1 minute for any response to previous questions.
Well, thank you. I am running for re-election because it allows me to serve Madison County one person at a time. I have the best job in local politics because it demands that each issue is addressed on its own merit. And when we work together, that's when we come to some solution that is equitable for all of us. Going into my 10th year, we've made a lot of progress, but we've still got room to improve. Technology is moving at a breakneck speed, and there's always new challenges. We do enjoy meeting with people when they come in, and it gives us the opportunity to hear their take on their property. I am here to listen to you. I am respectfully asking for your vote for re-election on May 22nd for Madison County PVA. Thank you.
Mr. West, 1 minute for any response to previous discussions.
Kind of a continuation of the question you asked me about my experience. The last 3 years, I've worked for the Department of Revenue as a property assessment coordinator. And I had 7 counties that I covered or went to and visited the PVA offices and the sheriff's offices. And during that time, there's a lot of things that they do that I saw that worked really good and some things that didn't work so good. So I've seen other offices and how they operate. So the other thing I want to say is I also obtained my SKA from the Department of Revenue, the Senior Kentucky Assessor's designation that is given for the education and the classes that I took through the Department of Revenue.
Thank you to our candidates for PVA. Mr. Johnson, is there an additional comment that you would like to make with 1 minute?
Yes, on the armed teachers, or Army teachers, if they had carrying concealed deadly weapons permits or would be willing to get them, and I should have added this a second ago, if it's someone that volunteered or wanted to volunteer to do that, that's a big responsibility for a teacher to take on, and I wouldn't want to be a teacher and have that responsibility forced on me, but it'd be on a volunteer basis. And also, I would work in conjunction with the program and the county schools to ensure the safety of the students as best as possible.
Thank you. Just so we can get in a few more questions for our PVA candidates, we're going to come back and ask you one question that both of you can answer. The question is, how would you address disputes with assessments? How could our citizens dispute an assessment? And we'll start with you, Mr. Ackerman.
Over the last 9 years, we've worked with thousands of people. We send out assessment notices anytime an assessment increases. And when they get that assessment notice, it is their opportunity to come in and meet with us. We do assessments on a very broad range. So we're trying to cover hundreds or thousands of houses. And so we're looking at the averages. So we meet with people and allow them to come in and share with them that they have no indoor plumbing, or that they rarely tell us about the hot tub in the basement. But we do have the opportunity to meet with them. Out of the thousands of people that we've met with, a very, very small percentage of people actually go on to an appeals process that's a formal process, because we know that the people are going to be genuinely honest with us most of the time, and we want to work with people. We don't want to fight with them. We want to work with them to come to some reasonable solution. Thank you.
And same question to you, Mr. West. How would you address disputes in terms of assessments and how our citizens can report those?
Right. When the PVA reassesses property and the assessment goes up, he's required by law to notify the property owner that the assessment has increased. And in that letter, there is an inspection period of 2 weeks where they can come in and have a conference with the PVA or the deputies. And that's required if that assessment is going to be changed. And we try to, I've got about 10 years experience doing that during that inspection period. So, and you do hear all kinds of stories and all kinds of, you get information on the condition of the inside of the house, where we only view the outside of the house. And if we can come to an agreement, we can lower the assessment or come to a happy middle ground. And if we can't, then there's a local appeals board that they can go to. And if they don't get relief there, they can go to the state appeals board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our candidates for PVA. For our candidate for sheriff, Mr. Johnson, in light of the current issues of overcrowding in our jail, what are your thoughts in dealing with this situation, and how would you plan to improve it?
I would attempt to work with the jailer and also the staff at the Sheriff's Department or the people that work for me. If there was an option and it wasn't a serious crime to cite other than arrest, to go ahead and cite the person to court, which is just kind of, I guess, passing the buck off to someone else, because once they go to court, eventually they would probably be sentenced anyway and you still have the same problem. So I don't know, other than possibly building on the jail, and I haven't really looked at the jail that much, but I know the jail was built in around 1990, and there might have been some small additions throughout the years, but it's basically too small for the needs of the county at this point.
And then we'll ask one more question of you, Mr. Johnson. How do you feel that communication exists between the sheriff and the jailer, and would you seek to improve or change communication between your offices?
As far as current communication, I'm not sure how it would be at this time. If elected sheriff, I plan on working with every agency, including the jail, the police departments, our mental health folks, hospital, any agency or entity that I can to form a better partnership with in the county is my intention and my focus.
Thank you very much. We'll return to our candidates for county attorney. This will be one question for each of you to answer. By and large, the majority of our questions that have come to us at this forum and previous forums have been related to the drug epidemic and the many problems that are related to it. In your position, what strategies would you have or would you like to implement to improve the way we address the drug epidemic in Madison County?
Well, number one is alternative sentencing and using the Healing Center. The Healing Center is going to be a great asset to the community. It's going to be a detox facility for 30 days, medical detox, and then life skills and vocational training to get people back in their feet. And a lot of this comes with counseling and mental health help. And really, that's the only way that we can get out of this crisis. We have to grow out of it. We have to help people get back on their feet. That's really the only answer at this point.
Ms. Heyman, same question. Your ideas to help us address the drug problem in Madison County?
Well, I think we have to get out in front of it. You know, I sometimes tell people I don't wear a cape and tiara. I can't fly around the world and protect bad things from happening. We deal with it after the fact in the criminal justice system. But we have in this position the ability to get out in front of it in some ways, like I said, to reach out to the children and address that. Now, I'm not against rehab, obviously. Everybody's life is worth saving, especially if you're pro-life. It's everyone's life. But the reality is you can't just address the users. We have to address the traffickers, the people who are putting the drugs out on the street, And the reality is they need to go to prison, they need to go to jail, and they need to stay there. Now that's going to roll into the issue with the jail problem and the overcrowding with the jail. And the reality, in my position, the jail has to get bigger. As far as the percentage goes, in which we're looking at, I think it's 0.04% of your community, we're on track for that. It's not that we're exceedingly higher than any other community. We're about proportionate to statistically what they say we should be. So I think you have to do a balance. There's not a magic wand, and if anybody tells you there's a magic wand, they're either fibbing to you or they're fibbing to themselves.
Mr. Jennings, same question. Your thoughts and ideas to address the drug problem?
Well, I think it's maybe a threefold approach. I agree with Ms. Heyman that number one, prevention is something that we need to do, and we need to do it early. My fiance is a school teacher, elementary school, and she tells me that in third grade they already know about drugs. They're not using them, but they know what it is. So we can't wait to high school in order to educate children about this. We need to go ahead and do that now. And I'm a proponent of partnering with local schools and getting that education to them. Secondly, I've sat down with Mike Coyle, and law enforcement needs more jail beds for the dealers. We've got folks that are passing heroin, they're still passing pills, and there's nowhere to put them, and we need jail beds there. For the addicts, we need recovery beds over there, and I think that could all be done in one facility, but it needs to be larger, and we need to have it to accommodate those kind of folks. So, and then on a third point on it, I think we need to hold those accountable that have started this, and I would support any efforts to continue to hold these manufacturers of the pills responsible for what they've done.
Mr. Patterson, your ideas and suggestions on combating the drug epidemic.
Yes, thank you. To address first the issue of the rehab center and the jail, they put a spade in the ground tomorrow. You're looking 3 or 4 years before you have any facility that's built and ready to be staffed and then have people put in place. We've got to deal with what's in front of us right now. And back to an earlier question, I begin from the perspective of the victim. And I also believe firmly that recovery begins with accountability. And my job and the prosecuting arm of the county attorney's office is to hold people accountable for the choices that they make. And if you're an addict, but you hurt somebody or you steal from them, you're going to be held accountable for that choice. And by being held accountable for that choice, hopefully that will aid you in the recovery process that comes later. We can, as a county attorney's office, build those programs. That's a community-wide issue that has to be addressed. I can promise you I'll do my part, which is hold them accountable. The community needs to come together and do the second part, which is aid them in recovery.
Thank you very much to our candidates for county attorney. We'll move on with some questions for the remaining candidates before we have closing remarks. To our PVA candidates, a number of the questions for both of you were related to the website, so I will give you the same question to answer on that topic. Is the website functioning efficiently, or what improvements would you like to see with the PVA website to provide information for our citizens? We'll start with you, Mr. Ackerman.
I believe the website is working efficiently. There are always improvements. We've recently come out with a new version that's still in its beta, but has been used by several of the realtors and anybody else who wants to test it out. It allows for more data, easier searching, and keeps you from having to run from all over the place to pull down that information. You know, there is a fee for the website, but that's simply to pay for it. For the most part, I believe the website is updated pretty much on a daily basis, and on the mapping it's updated on a weekly basis.
Thank you, Mr. West. Same question. Your thoughts on the use of the website to serve the public and any improvements that you would like to see?
Well, I think it's very important to have that website available for the public. I think there's kind of a free area that you can get some very generic information on the property, or if you have a subscription, you can get access to the full information. One of the things I've kind of looked at and thought about was the Q Public is the name of the company that runs the website, and there's many counties in Kentucky that use that website, and the Fayette County has a free one. All their information is free, and I thought, well, maybe I should look into, is it feasible to have that free, no subscriptions? And the people that I've talked to has said they like it the way it is. They like to have the subscription, You get a username and password, and but it is important for the public to have access to the information at the PVA office.
Thank you to both of our candidates for PVA. And with our last question for our candidate for sheriff, Mr. Johnson, as we've discussed with some of our earlier candidates, the drug epidemic is certainly on the mind of a lot of voters. How do you feel that your office could play a role in this, and what ideas do you have in addressing it?
When I started was participating and ran the drug task force, I was dealing with a lot of people from ODCP, which is Office of Drug Control Policy in Frankfurt. And I sat down with those folks, and I'd always been a proponent of arresting people and putting them in jail, and I was up until I retired. But they said, you can't fix this, you can't arrest your way out of this mess. And looking at it, as I've gotten a little older, I agree. And a couple of the candidates just mentioned it. Prevention is the number one thing. We've got to start in the homes, we've got to start in the schools, and we've got to stop these kids from using drugs to start with. Aggressive enforcement, zero tolerance policy, and if I'm elected sheriff, that's what I'll have. If you're selling drugs in this county, you will go to jail. We'll catch you sooner or later, and you will go to jail, and it's probably going to be sooner. And then treatment for those that are addicted. I know that we've had 11 confirmed opiate overdoses in Madison County already this year, and probably 3 more that's going to be, according to what the coroner said. So it'd be an aggressive approach.
Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. Again, thank you to those of you who've contributed questions. We've tried to summarize and hit most of the key topics. As we come to the close of this session, time's gone by fast, and we will begin with our candidates for county attorney and go down the line, and each of you will have 1 minute to give your closing remarks. We begin with Mr. Frazier.
As county attorney, I plan to continue fighting the opioid crisis, and I do plan to put victims first and family first. Drug possession is often called a victimless crime, but that's not really true because families are involved and often small children are involved. And children deserve to have a safe home. And that's part of the problem. We have to address it at home because many children are around drugs, and that's where it starts. And then we're in school. There's other kids whose families are deep involved in drug addiction. So really, we have to offer treatment to families. We have to offer encouragement for people to utilize Casey's Law and compulsory treatment for their loved ones. Treatment's our only option, and I plan to work with the fiscal court in building the healing center because it's something that our county needs and we have to have. Additionally, we will prosecute traffickers as we do now. We're putting traffickers in jail now. It's just simply not fixing the problem.
Ms. Heyman, 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Thank you. I tend to point on 3 issues, and there are my primary 3 issues, obviously reaching out to the children, the prevention and education. I've been involved in Madison County for several years. I didn't start community service because I was seeking office. This kind of just seemed like the right time to move forward with it. But a lot of what I've done has always been with our children, so that's a big issue for me. The second point is I've been very lucky to have a very good working relationship with law enforcement here in Madison County from when I prosecuted here, and that's been continuous throughout my years. And those ladies and gentlemen are out there risking their lives, doing jobs none of us want to do. So it's important to me that that relationship stays strong so they know they can rely on me in court to seek their opinion, to know what happened when they were out there, and to have their back when they need some questions answered. And obviously the drug epidemic that we've all pointed on and is terribly difficult to say anything of substance about in 1 minute. So I just appreciate any consideration for your vote on May 22nd. Thank you.
Mr. Jennings, 1 minute for your final remarks.
Thank you to everyone for coming out. I think Madison County is lucky to have so many qualified candidates running for this office. As you've heard us speak tonight, you know, when you're running for an office of this type, we're going to agree on a lot of things. We're all here to benefit this community. I'm asking for your support because I don't take this opportunity to serve lightly. My dad, Bill, and my grandfather, Bobby, served this community for 30 years. I've seen the amount of time, the amount of work, the amount of dedication it takes to serve this community effectively. And part of that, you have to have the qualities to do that. And those qualities, in my opinion, are honesty, fairness, and accountability. You have to be able to not be afraid to tell people no. You're going to make people mad, but if you're honest to them about it and you're fair with them, they'll understand that at the end of the day. So I hope that on May 22nd you can cast a vote for me, and if you're not able to on the 22nd, maybe in November. Thank you.
Mr. Patterson, 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Thank you. I'm immensely proud to be county attorney. It's a very difficult job. It tests every bit of skill and experience that I've been able to develop over the last 20 years. But I'm immensely proud of that position because I care so much about this community. My wife and I are raising 4 children here, and we built on our family farm, and it's a dream come true every time we pull into our driveway to live in this community, to live on that farm that means so much to our family. And so this position, in a lot of ways, is a fulfillment of a career, fulfillment of a lifelong dream, and it's something that I can promise the people of Madison County that I'll give everything I have to for as long as I hold it. And that's important to me that people understand, first, where I'm coming from. And secondly, the kind of skill sets required to do this job in a way that the people of this county need us to do it in. And so it's that 20 years of experience that I'm relying on, and I hope that you all will consider. Appreciate your vote.
Thank you very much to our candidates for county attorney. We remind you that they are all listed and which primary they will be in, also in your program if you want to take note of that. Moving to our closing remarks for our Madison County PVA candidates, we'll begin with you, Mr. Ackerman. 1 minute for your closing.
I am the Madison County PVA, and I believe I have the experience and the education to continue running this office. As some of the other candidates have mentioned, running a local office is as much about doing the job as it is about running the business part of the job. I do have the best job in local politics because I get to work with people one-on-one. We get to sit down and address your issue. We want people to feel welcome to come in, and we want to take away that hesitancy. We want you to come in because that's the only way we're going to reach fair solutions. So I do ask for your vote once again on May 22nd for Madison County PVA. Thank you.
Mr. West, 1 minute for your closing remarks.
I'd like to thank the Chamber and EKU for the opportunity to come address the audience. And in closing, I'd just like to say that the PVA is an important job because if you're a taxpayer or property owner, you get a tax bill. And the PVA is charged with estimating the value of that property as of January 1 of each year. He's also required, or one of his deputies, to view the property once every 4 years, and that's usually when the reassessment takes place. I believe that with my experience and my background and my last 3 years as property assessment coordinator, I'm ready for the challenge. I'd like to be your next property valuation administrator, and I think it's time for a change in this office, and if you want a new direction, on May 22nd, vote West.
Thank you to our candidates for PVA. As we move to our candidate for sheriff, Mr. Johnson, 1 minute for your closing remarks.
First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you that came in here tonight and listened to what we had to say. Thank you for being invested enough in the community and what's right for the community to come pay attention and listen to what the candidates are saying and the ideas that they have. Second, with my training and experience and 4 years being at the Sheriff's Department and Drug Task Force down here before, feel I'm qualified, and if I'm elected sheriff, I will give you 110% every day that I'm in office. And I'd like to say thank you to EKU and the Chamber for having us here tonight, and I ask humbly for your vote on May the 22nd.
Thank you all very much. Let's have a round of applause for all of our candidates. You all are out of the hot seat. We'll take a brief break to let our next panelists come and be seated. Candidates for state representatives in various districts. Our candidates are seated in terms of their district, and we remind you when you give your introduction to let the audience know which district you are representing or seeking to represent. Also, thank you for all of the questions that are submitted. We will get through as many individual questions as we can. This is a large group, but we will have several questions that we feel strongly enough that this audience has an interest in that every candidate will have an opportunity to answer. We will begin, as our candidates are seated, with those for the House District 71, and we begin tonight with a 1-minute opening remark from Travis Brenda.
I'm Travis Brenda. I currently live in Garrett County over in Cartersville area. My kids are the 5th generation to live and work on that farm there. First of all, I want to thank the Richmond Chamber and EKU for hosting this event. I've enjoyed the conversations the past 2 weeks. Learned a lot and seen some good people. First, I'm not a politician. I'm a high school math teacher. Shortly after I filed, someone said, so you're a politician now? I said, no, I'm just a math teacher trying to make a difference. I work teach down at Rockcastle. This is my 19th year teaching high school math. I have a bachelor's degree from Berea College. I have a master's degree from here at EKU in instructional leadership and another master's degree in math education. Go to church at Church on the Rock in Berea for the past 21 years, and for the last 4 years I've been on the financial board there.
Our next candidate, 1 minute to Mr. Shell.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, Mindy, and EKU with David McFadden. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to be here to address this great crowd. It's been the honor of my life to represent you as the state representative from the 71st District. My wife and I are both homegrown here. My wife is actually from Madison County. She grew up in the Big Hill area. It's where we go to church at Paladin Missionary Baptist, where we teach the 2- and 3-year-old class. I'm a resident of Garrett County, lifelong resident there, 5th generation on the farm in Garrett County. We farm about 1,200 acres. We do cattle, tobacco, and flowers, and one of the hemp pilot projects that we have. It's been a great experience being your state representative. After we took the majority as Republicans, after 96 years of Democrat control, our caucus decided to elect me as the majority leader, and that has been able to impact your voice for this district immensely, and it's an honor that I have that I do not take lightly. And I appreciate each and every one of your support that you've given me over the last 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you to both of our candidates for District 71. Moving to House District 73, we do want to acknowledge that Pat Banks is not with us because of a prior engagement. We do have here a candidate for House District 73 who will begin with a 1-minute opening remarks. Rory Houlihan.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Linda, for the invite. My name is Rory Houlihan. I work at Lowe's in Winchester for about 20 years. The precincts that are part of my district are going to be Red House, Moberly, McCurry, and College Hill, and good old Army Depot. Okay, you are important. Okay, there's about 2,300 votes this primary that'll be coming from you. Okay. I listen all day long. I solve problems all day long. That's what I do. And we have a lot of problems, and I believe I can solve them. And I would love to listen to you folks, and I would love to do greet and meets. As you can see, I'm in canvassing cash because I forgot my pants to my suit. And as I intend to canvass this area and see you as much as possible. I would like to have your vote. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Ms. Mayfield, you will have 1 minute for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the Chamber and EKU for hosting us this evening, and it's a great crowd. I am the state representative for the 73rd District. I live just across the line in Clark County, just a stone's throw from my opponent here in Halls on the River, so we're close. We know everything that's going on here in Madison County. Spent a lot of time down here, but I wanted to join Leader Shell in saying what an honor it is to be a part of the majority in Frankfort. We have taken some tough votes this session because we know that we have to correct some things that have been ignored for many years, and it's been a difficult session, but we have gone through a lot, and we've done a lot, and we made some great choices. So it's an honor to serve the people of Clark and Madison County, and I want to thank you all for that privilege.
And also a candidate in District 73, we'll move forward with 1 minute for Mr. Yates.
My name is Les Yates. I'm running for state representative in the 73rd District. I've been a resident of Clark County for 25, 26 years, and for the past probably 17 years, my wife, Katrina, and I, we have owned and operated a business, Boonesboro Supply, which is basically a vinyl siding, window and door wholesale type of business. I have a college degree. I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm, as I said, a small business owner, but above all, I'm a working taxpayer. The backbone of this nation has always been the working taxpayer. They're the fuel that runs the engines of this country, yet we are the least represented, overregulated, and highest taxed group. With your help in the May primary, we can begin the task of maybe giving the government back to the people. We've reached a point that there is enough taxes being paid. Thank you.
And our candidates for House District 81, we will begin with Ms. Frazier. 1 minute for your opening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deanna Frazier. I would first like to thank the Chamber, and I would also like to thank you for being here tonight. I was raised in Madison County. I graduated from Madison Central, and I also graduated from Eastern Kentucky University. I went on to receive my doctorate, and I returned home to open my business, Bluegrass Hearing Clinic, where I work as an audiologist here in Richmond. In 2016, we were awarded the Small Business of the Year for our significant business growth as well as our community involvement. I'm the wife of Stephen Frazier, and we have 2 sons, Jacob and John. I would like to say that in this room are elected officials, business owners, mothers, fathers, industry, and education leaders. I want you to know that you will be my partners as we move forward. I'm not a politician. I'm a person that wants to make a difference, and this is my only way forward, is through this path. I want to be your voice. I will listen to you, and I will fight for you because I'm one of you.
And 1 minute for opening remarks for Mr. Morgan.
Hello, my name is Wesley Morgan. I am your state representative for District 81, current state representative. Originally from Eastern Kentucky. I moved to Richmond in 1982, and I have run a successful business since I've been here. I'm an EKU graduate. I have a degree in accounting. My wife, Lindsay, is also an EKU graduate, and my daughter, Jordan's an EKU graduate, and she is the Assistant Commonwealth Attorney in Boone County. I have spent my time, I would ask you for your vote and ask you for your patience. I'm a little sick today. I've had the flu for the past week, but I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our candidates and representatives for your introductions. We will move into some individual questions now. We will ask a new question of each candidate, but I remind you, if you would like to respond or share your thoughts on any of the other candidates' questions, please make a note of that, and you will have an opportunity at the end of this round of questions to share your thoughts on something that was previously asked. We'll begin with Mr. Brenda. Your question. As Kentucky continues to recruit businesses to locate here, what more can the General Assembly do to have our workforce prepared to fill jobs and be attractive to employers?
Well, as a teacher, I think one of the biggest draw is to have an educated workforce. If companies are looking at the workforce and they do not see an educated group that could step in and take on those roles in the first day, they're not going to even consider it. The infrastructure needs to be in place. For the last several years, probably 15, 20 years, I-75 widening project has been progressing on down through Madison and Rockcastle County. That's going to allow the ease of moving of products. So all that kind of goes hand in hand.
Thank you. Representative Schell, your question. What legislation would you support in terms of treating opioid overdoses, such as treatments that could be given as an early intervention?
Well, we've tried to address many pieces of legislation dealing with the opioid epidemic. We have passed several pieces of legislation dealing with curbing the prescription drug problem. Even as early as last year, we passed a bill that limited 3-day pain prescriptions so that we could help limit the prescribed opioids that are going onto the market. I'm definitely a big supporter of any intervention that we can get into the drug epidemic. I tell every group that I talk in front of whenever we talk about the drug epidemic that if there's anyone in here that has a silver bullet to put in the gun, I'll load it in Frankfurt myself and shoot it. It's something that we're going to continue to have a problem with. It's something that we're going to continue to have to face every year, is trying to figure out exactly how to, finally rid the drug epidemic that we have. But I'm afraid that it's an issue that we're going to have with us as long as we have people, as long as we have damaged people in a broken world, we're going to have a drug problem. But we have to make sure that it is the #1 priority that we're facing in Frankfurt. But things like the Healing Center that's going to be put up here in Madison County, and other programs like Operation Unite in Rockcastle, and then My Brother's Keeper down in Rockcastle County, are all things that we're trying to work on.
Thank you to our candidates for District 71. We're moving to District 73. You will also receive separate questions. We begin with Mr. Houlihan. Would you support providing automatic restoration of voting rights after felons have completed their sentences? Why or why not?
Okay. Depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about somebody who got caught having pot and lost their voting rights? Yeah, because that is actually a lot of folks. And that's also a way of discriminating against folks, okay? But if we're talking about a hardened felon, that might be a little different. There's a lot of gray area here. You have to listen to folks from many sides, listen to police officers. You have to listen to people and figure out what the best alternatives are and the best way of going about putting this about. Thank you very much.
Our next question for Representative Mayfield. There's been a lot of focus on job training and a skilled workforce. Since we are here on the campus of EKU with students present tonight, what role do you see universities playing in having a highly trained workforce?
Well, obviously, I believe that the universities do a great job overall with training our workforce. And we've heard so much testimony during the past sessions, being on education committee up until last year. It always amazed me when we had people come in from corporations that would tell us that, we can't get enough people, qualified people to come work for us. We always have openings, and they said that they told one story that a lady was hired, and she came in Monday and Tuesday, and then she didn't show up on Wednesday, and they checked with her, and she said, well, I didn't know I was going to have to do that every day. And it was shocking to all of us that, maybe there is that factor out there that not everyone knows that this is what is expected of workers in the community. So, we have put in financial literacy education for our students and life skills for new workers to teach them those things. And there is much work to be done, but the universities certainly help.
Thank you. Mr. Yates, your question. Do you support moving Kentucky's statewide elections to even-numbered years to align with presidential elections? Why or why not?
Yes, I do. Of course, me running for this office here has been a eye-opening experience. And the saddest part about it is the low voter turnout. I think maybe one way to maybe help that would be to go ahead and have the governor's election in the same years that we have, like for example this year, state representatives, state senators. I think it would get more people out and maybe give people a better chance to get to know all the people that's running for these offices. So I guess in the short answer is yes, I would support that.
And thank you to our candidates for District 73. To our candidates in District 81, Ms. Frazier, your question. Would you support a statewide smoking ban? Why or why not?
I think people have the right to smoke, and what they do in the privacy of their own home is their own business. I understand in public places that people that have a right to smoke have also the people that don't have a right to smoke. So when we're in public places, I do think that, we have to be considerate of others. And so, maybe like they do in the airports, we can have some, designated smoking areas and that type of thing. But, that's something to me is an equal right issue. The people that do smoke have the same right as the people that don't smoke. It's not something that is illegal.
Representative Morgan, your question. Would you support transitioning Kentucky's economy to a consumption-based tax system?
I advocate it. That has been one of the platforms that I've ran on. I believe totally in a consumption tax. I think we should repeal our state income tax. I believe consumption tax is the most fair tax. That people who buy more products pay the tax. The states that Florida, Texas, Wyoming, Tennessee, those states do not have a state income tax, and I personally do not believe that that the state has a right to get in your financial affairs anyway. That's the reason for a consumption tax.
And to all of our candidates, if any of those questions or any other topics that come up that you would like to comment on, we have a number of topics that all of you are going to get to address, so it was hard to come to pull questions that don't relate to some of our major topics. And we remind you that any questions that were directed to a single candidate have not been pulled, so we tried to pick ones that could be addressed by all of our candidates. If there are any comments that you would like to make addressed to, otherwise we're going to go down the line, and we'll start with Mr. Brenda. You will have 1 minute response as well to any of the previous answers that you would like to address.
Similar to what Mr. Shell said, dealing with the opioid epidemic, Unite in the 5th Congressional District has had good success with a three-pronged approach of looking at not just the enforcement of the laws, but offering treatment and education. As far as the education, I forget, that may have been Ms. Mayfield. Not everybody, and I tell the students in my classroom, not everyone needs a four-year college degree, and all that does for some people is puts a lot of debt on them that they have trouble paying later. We need kids moving into technical type jobs, hands-on type work, and those are jobs that are going to always be needed. As far as consumption-based tax, I know there's a big push for that. To me, that is more of a tax on the lower income and the working class and using more of their dispendable income. Tennessee actually spend less on education.
Mr. Shell, Representative Shell, any comments that you would like to make from the earlier questions?
Yeah, thank you, Christy. I want to address two, and it's kind of a double in the same answer for the two different questions. The General Assembly to attract business and transitioning to a consumption-based tax. That's what we did this session. We started our state on the direction of transitioning our Commonwealth into a consumption-based tax code away from the income-based. We went to the fairest way that I know how with a single sales bracket going from 6 to 5%, getting rid of all the brackets, going to a straight flat 5%, expanding out what we tax on to end-of-sale services as best we could in order to get in the right direction. If we were just to go straight right now from an income-based tax to a sales tax, just straight out with what we have now, it would take 14% tax on sales tax. And so in order to get that done the right way, we have to transition through that. And that's going to make our economy a lot more attractive to business owners and to job creators to come here. The Tax Foundation, which does tax evaluation of all 50 states, moved us from 33rd to 18th this year because of the work that we did in the General Assembly. That's a big deal, folks. That means that we're going to be more competitive for job creation in this state because of what we did in this session.
Thank you to our candidates in District 71. Moving to District 73, we will begin with Mr. Houlihan. Any comments and remarks from earlier questions of any candidate?
Most definitely, even years. How many know that I ran for U.S. Senate in 2016? Raise your hands. This is the proof. What happens is that the minor folks don't get listened to. No one pays attention to the minor candidates. They get overshadowed by the presidential candidates, and nobody realizes that there was 7 Democrats running and like 3 Republicans running for U.S. Senate. because nobody heard the other voices. Now, consumption-based tax from an income tax is not more fair, it's less fair. What other tax is on your honor? That's income tax, not the sales tax. What slides the cost of government onto the poorest people? The consumption tax. What is bad for retail businesses? Understand, you are the job sustainers, and they're going to be taxing you more, not less. The job sustainers will have less disposable income. It's bad for retail. Thank you very much for the stop sign.
Representative Mayfield, any comments from earlier questions?
Yes, I would like to refer to the consumption tax. I do disagree with my opponent to my right. I do believe that a consumption tax is hugely successful, and I think it's a great step that we took in Kentucky, moving us up to 18th on the list that we are usually down in the low 40s on. And I believe that is something that is addresses the disposable income. It becomes your choice. You do not have to purchase these certain services. So I think that that would be a great thing. Other states that are doing it the people that live there seem to love it. They don't have complaints with it. So I think it is a broader picture, and I think it's good for Kentucky, and I think it's part of the big plan to help us financially and business-wise. So I do support that.
Mr. Yates, your opportunity, 1 minute for any previous comments or questions to respond to.
Yeah, first of all, I agree with Donna. The consumption tax, I have no problem with that. It's a good idea. A quick way, if you want to help small businesses, would be they have a thing which basically you pay tax on your inventory, which is called a tangible personal property tax. And sometimes, if you're not careful, you're paying taxes on the taxes on the taxes. So that's one thing that should be addressed immediately for businesses in general. Then the other thing is, when we're talking about taxes, all I hear is more taxes, more taxes, more taxes. What about we start looking at some ways to cut the waste? I mean, there's got to be some systems that can be streamlined. There's got to be some waste that can be cut out. So I think if you're going to address more taxes, we ought to address the waste problem also.
Thank you. Thank you to our candidates and representative of District 73. Moving to House District 81, we will have 1 minute again to respond to any questions or comments from previous candidates, and we'll begin with Ms. Frazier.
I would like to address Ms. Mayfield's question and make some further comments in regards to the impact that EKU can have on our economy. We don't want our students to be our greatest export. We need them working right here and helping to be tax-paying citizens. Also, in regards to the airport and our aviation program, the airport has been promised funding for years and years and years. We need to get the airport up and running, and it will be a great asset to not only EKU but also to the industrial park. It will help bring businesses into the park, which will also create more jobs.
And Representative Morgan, 1 minute for any response to previous questions or comments.
Well, a couple of responses. The first is as far as the tax situation goes, there's about $13 billion worth of tax exemptions in Kentucky that we could go and take some of the subsidies out that we give certain businesses and so forth and tax them the same way that we would me or anyone else in this room. Secondly, as far as the workforce development, I believe that our big push should be in the vocational training. That's really where a lot of the job growth is going to be, and it's really high-paying jobs. Thank you.
Thank you for all of your comments and responses to earlier questions. We will now enter the portion of this forum where each candidate will answer the same question. These are topics that we had multiple questions, and so I will make an attempt to generalize, and feel free to address these in any specifics that you so choose, but we will begin with general topics that each candidate will answer. So we will move down the line. We will begin with you, Mr. Brenda. What are your strategies and approaches to address the pension shortfall in our state?
Well, first of all, 15 of the last 22 years, the pension funding has not been there. The legislature has failed to put in their part. All state and county employees have put in their part. And I know there's been talk over the last couple of years that this administration has put in more than the previous governor. And really that argument is not valid because they're doing the bare minimum. That's what's expected anyway. If the funding were put in the way it was supposed to be, there have been studies that have shown that within 23 years the funds would be back at an acceptable level. There's a misconception in the public that it has to be 100% funded. The only reason it would need to be 100% funded is if all of it had to be paid out today. If it's 70 to 80% funded, then that it is still viable.
Representative Schell, your thoughts on addressing the pension shortfall?
Thank you, Christy. We have a $40 billion unfunded liability in this state. It is absolutely choking our economy and our ability in order to do what we need to as state government and for job creation. What we did this session was work to start addressing that problem with moving new hires into a hybrid cash balance and with trying to get this system put on a level foundation. The biggest thing that's not talked about is the amount of money that we've put into this system in this past session. We moved to a level dollar formula, which basically amortizes that money out over a 30-year period. An extra $1 billion with a B was put into that system, all the systems combined, from the previous session. That's why you saw such a cramped budget that we had to deal with in this last year. Whenever you do that, and through the fixes that we put in place in this session, Moody's has already looked at it with their actuarial analysis, and just funding it means this. This year, $1.5 billion in KTRS, the teacher system. In 20 years, that goes over $2 billion. Just funding it means a big deal. It's not just a matter of just funding it at the current level where we're at. Just funding it means that we have to go over $2 billion in the 20th year. With what we did this session, we were able to put in a flatline contribution through level dollar at $1.3 billion over the next 30 years in order to get us to full funding. It is a really big deal, and we do not need to take it lightly with the problem that we have.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Houlihan. What are your thoughts on addressing our pension shortfall?
Okay. 2008, 2014, the legislature did address that. Understand that 2008 we had a huge recession, and it took the legislature 2 times to actually get it somewhat stabilized because we lost a lot of investment. Okay. With that said, there was an alternative, Democrat and Republican bill, which never made it to the floor. One of the neat things about that bill was user-sustained diversified financing. That was to use the funds to invest in the roads and highways and the infrastructure of our governments, okay, and pay that fund back instead of giving that to Wall Street as an investment. Okay? Now, where would you rather have the monies invested? Here or in Wall Street? Thank you.
Representative Mayfield, same question on addressing our pension shortfall.
Thank you. As Leader Schell did say, we have in the state of Kentucky a $40 billion amount of unfunded liabilities. There was absolutely no choice. We had no choice but to stop the bleeding. We have to stop it right now. It was a very hotly debated topic all session long, as everyone saw. But you know what? As a responsible legislator, I feel that we had to do what we needed to do, and that was to come up with a system that, for the first time, fully funds the pension systems that is recommended by the actuarial analysis. We had to do it. You know, it's very upsetting, to mess with anyone's pensions, but the bottom line was we looked at it so closely and had to make a responsible choice that will ensure in 10 years to 12 years down the road that morning when everyone wakes up, they will have a check. Whereas if we had kept on the pattern we were on, that wouldn't have happened. Thank you.
Mr. Yates, same question on how you would address the pension shortfall.
Well, first of all, I don't think we want to blame the people that's trying to fix the problem. I think they did their best with what they had to work with, Donna included. And this problem didn't just happen overnight. It's been going on for 40, 50 years. Maybe there's some other things that could be done to help generate some money, maybe postpone.
As I would address the pension shortfall is I address things as a dollar saved is a dollar earned. The budget that I have in my business is a little over $3 million, and we look at ways every year, every quarter of how we can be more effective, how we can save money, whether it's when cost of goods or more efficiency in our services. So I know in a budget of $1 billion, there has to be somewhere where we can find some cost savings. I would call for an audit. When you dump everything into the same bucket, things get muddied. So I would look at every single department and see if there's a way to have some cost savings there. The other thing that I would like to say is if you think of education as an industry, how it impacts Madison County, EKU and the Madison County schools are our two biggest payrolls in our county. We need these people spending money and living and shopping in Madison County.
And same question for you, Representative Morgan. How would you address the pension shortfall?
I think the first thing I'd do, and I'm going to agree with my opponent, is I'd move the pension system outside of the hands of the General Assembly. You have a constant turnover in representatives, so the person who's promising you something now may not be there 2 years from now or 4 years from now. So I believe it should be put in some kind of a trust, but the first thing they got to do, they got to have a pension reform, sit down with all parties involved, work out something that's going to be feasible for it to work its way out. Then once they come to that and it goes into the trust fund, then if the state fails to provide the money that's necessary, then they get sued.
Thank you all for your comments and discussion on that important topic. We will have another question that we had so many questions about from our audience and online that we will address this as a general question to all candidates. This one is related to school safety. What legislation and measures would you support related to school safety, gun control, arming teachers, any of these options that have been a topic of much public discussion and debate? What would you support to enhance school safety in our state? We'll begin with Mr. Brenda.
I had someone ask me a few weeks ago if I thought there should be a teacher in each hallway of the schools carrying concealed. And I said, no, I don't. I think there should be two because one of them may be absent one day. We had a retired state police officer come through Rockcastle County High School and all the schools in Rockcastle County just here a few weeks ago after some of the other incidents across the country and looking at what needs to be put in place. And one thing he talked about was those teachers carrying concealed, those that have proper training. I have a license to carry concealed. It's a day-long training. I think there needs to be more training than just that carry concealed class. But it's not to be used for an offensive purpose, but rather defensive. If a teacher is trying to protect a classroom and someone's trying to come through a door, it's easier to protect that class if the teacher is armed. But again, there needs to be proper training in place.
Representative Schell, same question on school safety and what you would support.
Thank you, Christy. This past session in the budget, we put in $6.5 million into school safety. That's about $5.2 million more than what has been put in the past. We also allowed for sheriff's departments to have extra special deputies for every 1,000 person that they represent, a special deputy, which can be utilized to be able to be put in the schools. Right now in the state of Kentucky, the law states that if you want to have guns on your grounds, the school board can vote to do that, and we saw Pike County do that a little bit earlier in the year. That caused a lot of people in Frankfort to panic a little bit and get a little nervous about what that meant of arming teachers, arming people in the schools, and what that would actually mean in a practical sense. I'm for making sure that we have people on school grounds that have the ability to have a weapon to defend our students. Gun-free zones are what's getting people killed every single day right now. And so what we have to do is make sure that we're putting in place the right regulation and putting in place the right criteria so that when people are in those schools defending our children, that they have the right training and ability to do so.
Moving to District 73 in this race, would you respond to the same question? We'll begin with Mr. Houlihan on your thoughts on how to improve school safety and what you would support.
First off, what nation has had the most terrorism in the world? Israel. Do they have guns in their schools? No. Did they do studies? Why? Yes. Understand, they use rubber bullets to demonstrate that more bullets means more children hit. Okay? They put their security, 2 armed, fully armed AK type personnel outside the schools. Okay? Not inside the schools. For a reason. Because first off, a handgun is outgunned by AK-15. Okay? It has more range, it has more firepower, it won't do the job. So they're armed, yes, but they're outside the school, not inside the school, so that the terrorists know that they mean business.
Representative Mayfield, your thoughts on what you would support for school safety in our state?
I do support the privilege of being able to be a concealed carry person. I have no problem with that in the schools at all. I am concealed carry myself, and they're certified and been trained. I have no problem with that at all. Quite frankly, I believe the answer to school security is simply a magnetometer checking entry of all persons going on into the school itself. They get stopped right at the door before they are enabled to walk in amongst the public. I think that that's simple. It works at factories, places all over the United States right now, and I think that the schools should take advantage of that. It does work.
Mr. Yates, what would you support in terms of improving school safety?
Well, first of all, it's hard for people, I think, in my age group to understand the problem to begin with. And I think back when I was in high school, our teachers, they wore suit and tie, the ladies dressed up. It was yes, sir, it was yes, ma'am, and if not, you went to the office, principal's office, you might have got your butt busted. So it's hard for us to understand this, but now I think that, carrying a gun and shooting a person or an animal is 2 totally different things, especially in that type of an environment. But I think that maybe we need to start addressing what is the root of a lot of these problems. I personally can't help but think that some of these horrendous video games that these children are playing has a lot to do with it. So I think if arming the teachers is an immediate, maybe a slowdown or stop, I guess I would be for it. But I don't think it's the end solution. I think we've got to change the mind of the children.
Thank you. In District 81, we will begin with Ms. Frazier with your thoughts on improving school safety and what you would support.
As a mother, I can say that it's very comforting when I drop off my child. I meet Officer Wright. He's there, he is armed, and he is there to protect our children. So as a mother, like I said, that's very comforting. I understand that the Madison County School Board has decided to hire additional resource offices, and they're available in every school. So I think that is a positive step forward. I think in my role it would be to support the elected school board officials and the law enforcement that's in our community. They know our buildings and they know our children, and I would be there to support whatever plan that they feel is the best to keep our children and our teachers safe.
And Representative Morgan, same question. What would you support in terms of improving school safety?
I actually introduced a House resolution on the POST program, which is Protect Our Students and Teachers. It did not make it out of committee, but basically what the POST program does is it trains teachers and administrators in your schools who volunteer, it's a voluntary situation, that want to take the training and be psychologically tested, to where you would have access to a firearm, and it could be handgun or AR-15, whatever you want to do, but it could be locked up under a fingerprint lock so that no one could get to it unless they had to interdict a shooter within the school. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our candidates. We will move forward with another theme that we saw several times in the submitted questions, increasing revenue for our state. When it comes to some of the options, including legalizing marijuana, hemp, medical use of marijuana, gaming, You can comment on any of the above if you so choose. What do you feel Kentucky should do to increase revenue in our state? We begin with Mr. Brenda.
Well, as far as legalizing marijuana, either for medical or recreational use, I'm not in favor of that. And I understand there are uses for that. One of my good friends from high school passed away last July. He had moved to Colorado because of cancer and was using the oil from marijuana to treat that. But as far as making it more readily accessible to the young people, brains are developing until age 25, I'm not in favor of that. For increasing revenue, it was mentioned earlier about decreasing waste. Right now, we've got about $11 billion in tax revenue each year, $13 billion in tax incentives, including those tax incremental financing. Fritz Farm, the Summit at Fritz Farm, $800 million project got $248 million in tax incentives. I think that's excessive.
Representative Schell, your thoughts on increasing revenue and any of these measures you would support?
Thank you, Christy. I am not in favor of medical marijuana or recreational marijuana legalizing in Kentucky until we are able to see from the FDA and from the medical community that those things actually do have medical purposes to where that we can say it without a doubt. I don't think that that's a conversation that we will have legitimately in Frankfurt. We passed a resolution this year in order to get a study to try and expedite that on the federal level for the efficacy of marijuana, medicinal marijuana. As far as expanded gaming, I'm not for that either. Whenever you talk about increasing revenues for the state, I think that we do that by expanding the economy, making more taxpayers because we have more jobs and more job creators in this state. And that's what we have worked on in this past session by moving us from 33rd in business competitiveness to 18th is a big deal. And that's going to create more taxpayers because there's going to be more people in the workforce, which is going to bring in more revenue to the state. And that's what we have to continue to do, is to make our state more business friendly.
Thank you, gentlemen. As we move to District 73, we will start with Mr. Houlihan. Your thoughts on increasing revenue and any of these measures that you would support approving?
Okay. Medical marijuana, about time. Okay? I have a whole bunch of friends who are farmers, and their side crop, after they grow their main crop, is medical marijuana. Okay? Now, they can't use any herbicides, pesticides, because it's not government approved. Okay? The reason why it's not government approved is it's illegal. Okay? Now, gambling. The horse industry produces a lot of jobs. Okay? For Kentucky, a lot of revenue. And as being a person in the country, I like horses. So I have no problem expanding our horse industry. Okay? I guess this is the end. You've told me to stop.
No, not yet.
Not yet?
In 15 seconds.
In 15 seconds?
But not now.
You'll have to save it for your closing remarks. Representative Mayfield, your thoughts on improving revenue for our state and any of the measures that we've discussed, would you support them?
I think that we do need to expand our economy and be a more business-friendly state. We have begun that transition to that type status. I think it is working well. I think it will continue to work well. Make it more business-friendly. Expand the tax base. It works. That's what I propose. I am not in support of medical marijuana without having any information in front of us from the FDA. We have submitted the request for that, have not received it back yet. I'm uncomfortable with that without knowing exactly what the effects are. I'm also not in favor of the expanded gaming communities that do have casinos in them. If you go across the borders, you see problems in those towns too. And it's not the answer to all the questions that we have. So I just would prefer a better business community. Thank you.
And Mr. Yates, same question on generating revenue and any of these measures you would support.
Well, first of all, I guess when it comes to the medical marijuana, you know, people, when you're laying on your deathbed, I think personally you should be allowed to take anything you want. One of the bad things about getting old is you do see a lot of your friends dying off, and right now, the cancer is a plague in our society. I just don't think the government should be allowed to tell you what you can do when you're on your deathbed. Now, I keep hearing that everything is business friendly. Most of the businesses that I talk with, they don't understand what that word means because it's usually more regulation and higher taxes. There are some things that could be done to actually give a small business an incentive to hire more people and to grow. One of those quick ones was the tangible personal property tax. That's a small one, but it would be a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Moving to District 81, we will begin with Ms. Frazier. Same question. What are your thoughts on generating revenue and any of the earlier measures that you would support?
I have just a few comments on a couple of the different issues. First of all, I'm always for more economic growth. Economic growth equals more citizens, and that creates a broader tax base, and that's going to be more payroll and also more property tax. As it pertains to some of the other measures, I really think Madison County needs to look at the possibility of industrial hemp. Madison County was a tremendous tobacco producer. We have generations of farmers and have nothing to grow. As I have been and talked to different farmers, they need a crop that they can take to market and make a living off of. Also, just off the cuff, there's some inconsistent taxation. Apparently, there's tax on dog food, but there's not on horse food. There's some differences that we can make in thoroughbred sales and things like that. So just more consistent taxation.
And Representative Morgan, your thoughts on generating new revenue and any of the measures that you would support?
Well, other than going to the consumption tax, I'm against all taxation. And I think the people of this state are taxed, their burden is enormous. Most people, if you take and look at their paycheck, 45% of it's coming out before they ever get the check to the bank. Then every time they turn around, they got taxes on their telephone, taxes on their electric bill, and it's time that we start looking at how we spend their money rather than how much more we can tax our citizens. That's all.
Thank you for all of your responses. And that leads us into another topic that we got a number of questions on that I believe will be our last question before we go to closing remarks. Do you support tax reform? Why or why not? What measures do you feel our state should focus on when it comes to taxes? We'll begin with Mr. Brenda.
I think tax reform is important. Our tax system has not been updated for quite a while. I know Mr. Shell and Ms. Mayfield mentioned the comprehensive tax reform during this past session. They keep citing the tax foundation and our jump in ranking from 33rd to 18th. Number one is Wyoming. Number two is South Dakota. It's that system that looks at those rankings is not necessarily lines up with what Kentucky is. The consumption-based tax, comparing us to Tennessee, Tennessee has a different makeup with the Great Smoky Mountains, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, Gatlinburg, Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga. There's just a difference there that we keep getting compared to. I do think that that we do need reform, and not necessarily just moving the burden to the lower class and the working class, and while giving tax breaks to the wealthy.
Representative Shell, your thoughts on tax reform and the measures that you support?
Thank you, Christy. I'm extremely proud of the work that we were able to do this session on tax reform. It's the first significant piece of tax reform that we've done in this state in 80 years, whenever the income tax was actually put in place, the graduated income tax in 1936. We still have a lot of work to do, though. What I would like to see is us transition completely to a consumption-based tax, but that takes time in order to make sure that our economy doesn't implode with the lack of revenues for the essential services that we need, similar to what happened in Kansas. We have several taxes that need to be repealed altogether. The inventory tax is one of them that we started to repeal this session, but over a period of time. We need to do it immediately. The inheritance tax. There's a reason why people live in Kentucky, but they want to die in Florida. It's because they're able to keep more of their money in death to send on to their loved ones. We have about $13 billion in tax exemptions in the state of Kentucky that we exempt out. This past session, we were able to put together a working group to look at those over the summer, because each one of those have a constituency behind them, and many of you in this room are part of that $13 billion. Food, prescription drugs, utilities, and many, many other things are exempt from this that are a part of the $13 billion, and we have to take a comprehensive look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. As we move to District 73, we will begin with Mr. Houlihan. What are your thoughts on tax reform and the measures that you would support?
If tax reform is about sliding taxes onto you hardworking folks, you job sustainers, understand supply is equal to demand. Without demand, there is no supply, okay? Because all businesses are cash flows. I've been in retail for 20 years. I know that when the cash stops, so does business, okay? So you are the job sustainers. Sliding more and more taxes onto you is not going to create more jobs. It's not going to create more business opportunities. It will instead lower business opportunities, lower jobs, just like it did in Kansas. It put Kansas to shambles. They couldn't educate their kids. They couldn't pay for the utilities. They couldn't do anything. The Supreme Court of Kansas actually had to sue and overrun the legislature to get enough money to run the courts. Thank you.
And we will go with Mr. Yates on your response to the same question. Would you support tax reform, and what measures?
Well, from my side, tax reform has always meant higher taxes. Taking money out of someone's pocket that works for a living and giving it to people who don't work for a living is not necessarily a way to generate more income or higher taxes. I think that the tax thing definitely needs to be addressed. I think the perfect storm, if you will, is coming. The end of the baby boomers, from what I've been reading, they're ready to retire to the tune of somewhere around $4 million a year for the next 10 years nationwide. I don't know what's going to happen if the cities, counties, and states right now cannot manage their money or manage their budgets. What are they going to do in the over this next 10 or 11-year period when this crisis hits? So I think there definitely needs to be some tax reform, because I think we're all paying way too much taxes as it is right now.
Representative Mayfield, your thoughts on tax reform and the measures that you would support.
I thought I was doing so well here with my cold. I thought this is okay. I was wrong. I do support, we do need to get into tax reform, and we've already, I'm so sorry. I do support consumption tax. The inventory tax is something that we need to quit disadvantaging a lot of our businesses that are really suffering from that. There are many things we can do. I know that we have a lot of tax breaks that companies get. We need to put some sunset time restraints on those. And there's a lot to be done, but you can't do it all immediately. So I think it's a step-by-step process in trying to make, and as we keep hearing it, but we do need to make Kentucky business-friendly, more business-friendly, and look at all the different areas where we can do that. And I'm so sorry for the way I'm behaving, gee.
It is spring in Kentucky. As we move to District 81, we will begin with Ms. Frazier. Same question as our other candidates. How would you support, or would you support tax reform, and what measures?
So I think in general, our economy has changed to an economy of consumption of goods to a consumption of services. So, I'm sorry, our economy has changed to a consumption of goods to a consumption of services. So some of the things, again, that I've said before, I think that our biggest advantage would be to look at ways to increase revenue, and that's going to create jobs. I'm all about creating jobs, which is going to create a larger tax base, which results in greater payroll tax and property tax.
And Representative Morgan, your thoughts on tax reform and the measures you would support?
I voted against the tax bill. I did not believe that we should raise taxes on the middle class and the poor. And that's basically what we did when we put a sales tax on your laundry bill and your dog grooming. There's other places. I suggested that we put it on attorney fees and accountants, and no one wanted to do that. And I pay a lot of accounting fees and a lot of attorney fees. So I just thought that was unfair. I thought the poorest people are the one who was hit with it, especially in auto repairs.
Thank you to all of our candidates and current representatives. That concludes the specific questions. We tried to reach as many topics, at least generally, if we couldn't get to some of the specifics of those that we heard most often from our voters and those who submitted questions from our audience and online. As you all prepare for closing remarks, you will each have the same 1 minute to share anything in closing or address any topic that we did not cover. We were out of time. I did not get to ask how much each of you would give EKU if elected, so we'll have to save that question for later. Saved by the bell. For your closing remarks, 1 minute to share with our audience and viewers online your closing statement. We'll begin with Mr. Brenda.
Hit on several topics. First of all, the universities have been cut 35% since 2008, and trying to do more with less. That's being passed on to the students, which is making it more difficult for those students to come to school and then to go on and be able to pay that off after they graduate. Mr. Shell mentioned level dollar funding. The level dollar funding is meant for those that are operating in a surplus, not a potential deficit. It overinflates the numbers up front. It takes more money to get that in place up front, and it's not what we need. As far as the violence in video games and TV, I agree that is a big factor in what's affecting the kids today. The industrial hemp, the THC in it, similar thing, that it's currently being mixed with Ajax and Drano to get people higher than a kite. Traffic accidents have increased with marijuana. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think she's getting ready to raise the stop, so thank you. Remember me, Republican primary, May 22nd.
Representative Shell, 1 minute for closing remarks of your choosing.
Thank you, Christy. The problem with the amount of success that we've had over the last 2 years is that you can't get it all in a minute. But I really appreciate the opportunity to serve you as your state representative for the 71st District. We were able to tackle welfare reform this session, putting more people back to work. We have the lowest unemployment rate right now in the state of Kentucky that we've had in the last 42 years, the highest workforce participation number in decades. We were able to pass legislation to curb the opioid or the drug epidemic. And one thing that we didn't even talk about here that is probably the thing that I'm most proud of are two things. We have made our state one of the most pro-life states in the nation to protect the unborn. We've also worked to pass legislation to make the adoption and foster care system in Kentucky one of the best in the nation. We addressed the problem of our pension system this session. We were also able to lower your taxes. That's something that people don't talk about. Even though we expanded the base, they forget that we lowered the income and the individual and corporate income tax from 6% to 5%. That's what helped us go from 33rd to 18th in this state in business competitiveness. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to serve you as your state representative. It's an honor of my life. Being the majority leader in the State House has helped magnify your voice, and I'm asking you to send me back to Frankfort May 22nd in order to continue the work that we've done. Thank you.
Thank you for District 71. As we close with District 73, Mr. Houlihan, you have 1 minute for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
I'd like to thank you for giving us these lovely questions. Okay, my name is Roy Houlihan, of course. I would appreciate your support and your vote, and I would do a fine job in Frankfort. But why am I running? Well, I have a granddaughter sitting next to me in my picture. okay? Our kids are our future, okay? Do we want a bright new day future, or do we want one that's not so good, okay? We have death to our part, student loans, strapping our next generation, coming down the pipeline. We're cutting their education funds. So what kind of economy will we have in the future? Not now, but in the future. That's what's being decided today. What road we will go down in the future. We're at a crossroads, folks. We can either go one direction or another direction. I'm, as far as you can tell, the other direction, okay?
And you're out of time. Thank you. Representative Mayfield, you have 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for attending tonight and being so interested in our process. It's been an honor for me to represent Clark and Madison County for the last 8 years, and I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we as a conservative body passed this past year, you know, starting with fully funding the pension systems for the first time ever. With what we needed to pay into them to make them sustainable from here on, and by funding the K through 12 students to a record level of $4,000 per student per year. We added $60 million of new revenue for adoption and foster care, and that is something that will help those 8,000 Kentucky children that are in foster care system and get them into loving homes. It's an honor to be able to represent you all up in Frankfort, and I would ask for your vote, and would be my honor to be able to serve you again. Thank you.
Mr. Yates, you have 1 minute for your closing remarks.
You know, it's, people ask me, why are you running for this office? Some say I've lost my mind. But the truth is I'm self-employed. I'm not owned by any government body, any large organization, any special interest group. I'm running to represent the working taxpayers of the 73rd District. We need our leaders to care about the present, of course, but we also need them to care about the future. Most counties in the state of Kentucky have such a large elected government and a very large non-government tax burden levied upon the working people. Once these taxes are all paid, there's not enough money left to even grow our counties. I believe in term limits, and as Abraham Lincoln said, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and we lose our way, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. And I think that's what we need to do, is to take a look at what we're doing, and thank you.
Thank you. And as we close out with District 81, Ms. Frazier, 1 minute for your closing remarks.
I would like to take a little different turn or a spin on things and leave you with something that kind of sums up my philosophy of how I think that we should always address things. And it's everything I need to know I really learned in kindergarten. I'd like to share some of those with you tonight. So share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, don't take things that are not yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt someone. When you go out into this world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. I think that Frankfort needs someone that is so strong they can be gentle, so educated they can be humble, and so fierce they can be compassionate. I'm Deanna Frazier, and I ask for your vote, and I ask you to also influence others to vote, because we all are important and we all have a voice.
And Representative Morgan, you have 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Well, first, thank the Chamber again, and thank EKU for having this forum event. I have been your state representative since January of 2017, and I can tell you it's been an honor to represent you. I have tried to do everything ethical that I could possibly do. I voted to prevent against tax increases. I was one of the first people who came out against the governor's pension reform that I thought was really over the top. So I would like to continue, and I will be for the common person and not for the big interest in Frankfort. Thank you.
And how about a round of applause for all of our candidates and representatives? This will conclude our series of community forums before the May primary. We encourage you to stay, and if you would like to have specific questions or discussions with our candidates, many of them will still be around and have tables available. It has been my honor and pleasure to serve as your moderator this evening. Thank you again to our wonderful timer who only had to shake her finger at you all a couple of times. So good job. Thank you for being a part of this important process.
It's good to meet you, sir.